Hi guys! So when people talk about contact microphones, usually they're just referring to these little brass piezo discs, like this one I have here. And most DIY contact mics, in fact, most contact mics that you can actually buy as well, are just piezo discs soldered on to the end of a guitar cable like this. And here's a schematic of that so you can see what I've done. And this does work in the sense that it does make sound. And this works the best if you just want to detect the presence of sound, or if you want to detect an onset or something like that, this works pretty well. But if you want to make high fidelity audio recordings, this doesn't work very well. So that does not sound very good. And in a moment, I'm going to explain to you what I hear when I listen to that and why I think it doesn't sound very good. But first I want to measure the problem so I can show it to you, and hopefully once you've seen it, then you'll be able to hear it a little bit better. And so I recently built an apparatus for measuring the characteristics of contact mics. And so I'll show you what that is. And so to start with, I have two identical brass piezo discs. And I'm going to use one as a speaker, and I'm going to use the other one as a microphone. And I'm going to use this double-sided tape to tape them together back to back. And this is going to allow me to play sounds out of one directly into the other one, kind of with no real intervening medium. And then so I also built this circuit here. And what this circuit is just two identical amplifiers, and these are in a unity gain buffer configuration, so they don't actually amplify the sound at all. And then I'm going to connect my piezo discs into this circuit. And so what I've done here is I've connected one of the piezo discs to the input of one of the amplifiers so that it can serve as a microphone, and then I'm connecting the other piezo disc into the output of the other amplifier so that it can serve as a speaker. And then this whole thing is powered by 12 volts from the wall. And so then I also have a mixer that's part of this setup. A little bit out of focus, but there it is. And so I'm going to connect the microphone side of my apparatus into one of the inputs of the mixer, just like so. And then I'm going to connect the output of the mixer into the input of the speaker side of my apparatus, like so. Okay, then I also have my laptop as part of this setup. My laptop is connected to the mixer via USB. And on my laptop, I'm running this software that I wrote. And the URL is there, so you're welcome to check this out. Although there's no documentation, I'm not going to provide any support for it, and it will probably change without notice, although you're certainly welcome to play around with it if you want to. And so what's going to happen as soon as I press the sample button, this software is going to start generating white noise. And white noise has this special property that it has an equal amount of energy at all frequencies. And so this noise is going to travel out of my laptop and into the mixer, and then it'll go out of the output of the mixer into the input of the speaker side of my apparatus, and it'll go through that amplifier and into the piezo disc, and this sound will cause that piezo disc to vibrate, and you should be able to hear that. And then of course these piezo discs are still taped to each other back to back. So this sound then will cause the microphone piezo disc to vibrate, and that sound will travel through the amplifier and out the output of my apparatus back into the input of the mixer, and from there it'll go back into the software in my laptop. And then what I'm going to do is plot the spectrum of the sound that comes back. And because the sound that I sent out has a flat spectrum across all frequencies, then whatever peaks and valleys I see in the spectrum will have been introduced by the piezo discs. Okay, so here we go. Okay, yeah, so this is the plot that just popped up on my laptop screen. So with some certain caveats, this can be understood to be the frequency response of the piezo disc, or more properly, it would be twice the frequency response of the piezo disc, because the speaker disc modified the sound once, and the microphone disc modified the sound a second time, and piezo discs have this property of reciprocality, meaning that the frequency response is the same whether you use it as a speaker or a microphone. So if you're working in decibels, then this would be twice the frequency response, although dividing this in half is the same as just relabeling the y-axis. So I'm thinking of this as being basically the frequency response of the microphone, with certain caveats, and I might make a separate video where I talk in more depth about what some of those caveats are. And so anyway, I'd like to draw your attention to a couple of features here. First of all, of course, there's this huge mountain somewhere between 4 and 5 kilohertz, and at least that agrees with what's on the label, because these particular discs are advertised as having a resonant frequency of around 4.6 kilohertz. So at least that kind of matches up. And as far as why this peak appears to be dented in at the top, I'm not 100% sure, but a few years ago I actually measured the impedance of one of these discs using a different technique. And I've noticed that these resonances in piezo discs are pretty much always accompanied by these weird phase shift things. And so it seems to be related to the phase shift as to why the top of this particular peak is dented in. But anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent. The main thing I wanted to show you about this is that if you look at the frequencies below about 1,000 hertz, it's pretty flat. Like, it's basically just a flat line from 10 hertz all the way up to 1,000 hertz. And that's kind of an important point here, so keep that in the back of your mind for a moment. Anyway, so now what I'm going to do, without touching anything else, I'm going to carefully open up my box and move one wire. And what I'm doing by moving this wire is removing the amplifier from the microphone side of this circuit. So now I'm just back to a piezo disc soldered onto a guitar cable like I showed you at the very beginning of this video. And so now I'm going to repeat my experiment. And maybe you saw what popped up on my laptop screen there. So this is the plot of that. And overall, it looks very similar to the previous plot, with the one major exception is that now the frequencies below 1,000 hertz are no longer flat. In fact, the lower you go, the more attenuated those frequencies are. So just for comparison, here is the original one with the amplifier in the circuit, and here's the one without the amplifier in the circuit. And so you can see really prominently that those low frequencies are very much missing when I'm just using a piezo disc soldered to a guitar cable. In fact, they're attenuated by about 25 decibels here, which is quite significant. And the reason for that is because this piezo disc has a certain amount of capacitance, and that capacitance interacts with the resistance in my mixer, which is at the other side of that guitar cable, to form a high-pass filter with a cutoff frequency that's like right in the middle of the audio range. So somewhere around a few kilohertz, all the sounds start getting attenuated pretty noticeably. And in fact, that's why I built this apparatus that has this unity gain amplifier in it in the first place, because the amplifier kind of isolates the piezo disc from the mixer so that this kind of weird interaction doesn't happen. And so I'd like to again play for you the clip that I showed you at the beginning of the video that involved guitar. And as I pluck each individual string from high to low, you can actually hear the sound being attenuated, like each subsequent string is a little bit quieter and weaker sounding than the previous one. And so now what I'm going to do is, without touching anything, I'm going to very carefully insert my little unity gain amplifier between the piezo disc and the mixer. Okay, and now I'm going to play the same thing again, and hopefully what you'll be able to hear is just how much stronger sounding the lower strings are. And so you can hear that really most prominently on that low B string, which is only about 61 Hertz or something like that. So I'll play those side by side for you so you can hear first what it sounds like with just a piezo disc soldered to a guitar cable, and then you'll hear with the amplifier inserted in there. And so that amplifier, even though it's not actually amplifying anything, it just gives you this much better kind of bass response. And if you really listen, there are about 1,000 reasons why this still doesn't make a very good contact mic, which is why what you should really do is buy a proper contact mic that has a proper preamplifier built into it that solves all of these kinds of issues that come up. But at least in a pinch, this kind of simple unity gain buffer makes a much better contact mic than just a piezo disc plain soldered onto a guitar cable. Anyway, so now that I made this apparatus, I was thinking about making a series of videos on contact mics where I measure different things and see what's going on. And I have quite a few ideas for that, but if there's anything that in particular that anybody wants to see, please let me know. Maybe I'll be able to make that video. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that for now. Might be nice if you guys would subscribe, like, share on social media, etc., all that kind of stuff. I hate saying all this over and over again. But anyway, yeah, I guess I'll see you next time. Bye!